there's so much energy that we waste on political hatred now, like so much energy. We could take half of that and redirect it toward community, half of that energy and redirect it toward people who want to participate in their community. I mean, it's just about where people are looking. And right now, people are looking at the national level for everything, and they're just blowing off. The energy is wasted as heat, like there's no light generated here, and we're not helping individuals. We're just fighting.
At least right now, white people are able to look to over 90% of the leadership of this country and say they're other white people too. They know what it is to be white. Where I think you might find that more middle and lower class white people care about who's in power is when the color of who's in power starts changing. Because I mean, you flat out the whole like, oh my gosh, well, I mean, we heard it with President Obama. Will a black man who's president look out for me? I'm white. Where I was just like, welcome to us. I've had white presidents my whole life, right? And so I do think, I mean, even as we saw with, Supreme Court, the last couple of Supreme Court justices, and you look at Ketanji, you look at Sotomayor, et cetera, and I do think some of this, like, they're women of color, where I think it's are they gonna know how to interpret the Constitution? It's coming down to, how do I, a white person, trust? There's one thing to trust a white man who's in power because he looks like me and hey, we cool, right? It's another thing when it's just like, oh, a black woman's in power, oh, a Latino woman's in power, oh, and then that's where you even see more of that tension coming into play. So I do think by default, there still is a lot of concern with who's in power.
Yeah, but that's also about political identity,
Yeah.
It's so deeply embedded with race in some cases that you can't separate it, right? I think if you have a black Supreme Court justice who is staunchly conservative, they love him, right? So
yes,
and so I think it's political identity is the driver there, and that is separated along racial lines strongly, right? And there's so many factors involved that you can't necessarily pin it on race, but it's so like Ketanji, she's a black woman, terrific, but I doubt that that's really the hang up that most people have with her. I think that it's her political ideology that they're really afraid of, and so it's the same and the opposite for black people, right? I mean, you're not probably terribly opposed to whoever, Sandra Day O'Connor or whatever. It's about their ideology and how they view the world, right? And it threatens some people and it's awesome for other people, right? So it's so polarized that there's tremendous energy because each wing feels tremendously threatened by the views of the other wing, right?
I agree 100% with Landon that, that's really at the heart of most of this, I think. I don't know. I can't even think of a single occasion of anybody I know who's white having any problem with anybody black in leadership positions because they're black. I mean, in fact, the one person I know who can't stand Ketanji Brown is my black female friend. She hates her. She thinks she's just awful, but she's far right politically. She's a Trump supporter all the way, hard right. And she's just ripped into Ketanji. Sorry, I kept trouble saying her. Ketanji Brown Jackson just ripped into her like thinks she's an idiot. She's not qualified. It was just, and this is coming from a black female because she's far right conservative. So I think that plays into it a whole lot more than the race issue. It's a lot more political. And I don't, just because we're so polarized right now, I don't know. I think, I hear you, Marin, but I differ, respectfully differ, I think.
We were once so conservative, we were slaves in this country. Watch who you align yourself with.
Yeah, I would agree.
And but I do think that Obama, with his presidency, there was racism. Actually, a lot. I do think a lot of the criticism with him could be traced to race. Absolutely.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Obama even tried to do a
agree with
with
that.
Trump, though.
Yeah, I agree with that. But every president gets ripped. I mean, by half of the country, right? Like
Sure.
Obama took his beating and
He
Joe
did.
Biden's taking his beating, and like, so I still think political identity is now the strongest
It is.
identity. I really
It's
think
changed, and it's changed even since Obama's presidency. That's why I think it's more
fact,
what
I think
Landon
that
is
there
saying
was
now.
more. I think there was more of an equilibrium, healthier place with Obama presidency, and I liked Obama. I voted for him, and I think that he had the right. We had maybe some of the best relations that we've seen. In between different groups in this country when Obama was president, and I wish I could capture that again. Because then social media came along and we became politically polarized to extremes, and now it's hard to separate what version of hatred it is. It's just so much hatred all around, so, and it's politically it's mostly politically based, and a lot of people feel threatened, so
Yeah.
I know previously in a previous conversation, there was some wariness or concern about the ability for government to solve some of these problems. And I guess I wonder, what do you see as the path forward? I understand the wariness. I've had my interaction. I've worked in government. I've had my own interactions with government, some positive, some not so positive, right? So I can feel you there. But I also wonder, if not government, where does the impetus, where does the ability, the ability to move the needle come from to do something like what you shared, which is provide a sense of opportunity for social status and value and contribution, and as well as the know-how of how to actually, move yourself forward. What is your sense of the path to justice in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the government level, it has to protect minority groups. I really think that that's one of the key roles of government. But what can they do beyond that that improves and doesn't exacerbate situations? I don't know. I think it has to start from the bottom up more than the top down. But I think there's definitely government ways to help. But I think that we're all sort of this slow-moving global phenomenon where economies are changing, globalization, like it's harder, and also the lack of religious faith is deteriorating, right? I know, because mine did. So this is happening across the United States, and so and also, everything is available on the internet. All music is available, everything. Like it's no longer in pockets and communities where you could find certain talented people. Now you get to go out across the world and find only the best, like you don't go to your community to see a certain band anymore, or a certain group of musicians, or like it's winner takes all, right? Like everything's globalized. Everything is universally available to everybody. So, these are the dynamics we have, winner take all, right? The best musicians will take all the entire crowd, and the good ones in the local communities, they won't get much anymore, right? There's not that. So there's these hierarchies in the communities that have been taken away by winner take all dynamics, I would say. And and churches have been largely stripped of their ability to bring together and create valuable social structure in communities as well, right? So I don't have the answer. I don't know what's going to replace it.
These are the headwinds. These are the headwinds. You worry about. You think government can protect against things like discrimination. You wonder about the ability of government to face these headwinds because
government has the power. They have the power, and it's going to be a hatred on each side, which, when government steps in, unless it's really broad-based, class-based, then there's going to be hatred from the other side, ideologically, of who's getting the help, so I think
So are you open more to something that's class-based versus race-based when it comes to government intervention? Here's what I want. Here's what I worry about. Let me
Uh-huh.
let me put my cards on the table and provide some of the motivation. Is I agree with you with all of those factors that you just shared. You know, I agree that social institutions don't exist like they used to give people places of social value. I agree that the economy is changing in such a way where more people are being left behind because it's winner take all.
Mhm.
But I worry about people being left behind. That's what
Yeah.
I worry about. And I wonder what force, if not some kind of government, well, I don't know, local, federal, or whatever, has the ability to push against some of these headwinds that you just, you know, explained very well, to deal with disparities generally, and then disparities in the context of race as well, you know, to provide less of a context for conflict, perhaps, right? And stereotypes and all of that. So,
But Todd, your question and your reflection also has to take into account the outsized influence government has by private party, and that many people in government, once they leave, these senators and Congress people that enact the laws, they go work for as consultants for private industry. So to me, the grease in all of this is the money, right? And I hear what you're saying, and I think what you and Landon are saying is very noble. I just don't think it will ever freaking happen, because there's too much money to be made with the people conflicting one another. I mean,
so
ad sales are through the roof because of this president election, right? And we were all getting along. Ain't nobody, you can't make no money with people getting along.
Right. Right.
So what you're saying, you're in a sense actually agreeing with Landon that
I think what
incentives.
Landon is saying is noble, but it won't happen.
But actually
is
Landon has wariness about government, and it seems like you have a similar wariness about government because you don't think the incentives are aligned to actually use government in a way that will solve the problem. That's what
thank you for that recapitulation. Wariness is a word, but I have zero faith that any of this has happened. So yeah, I'm agreeing with Landon, and I also think, I mean, baby, there's too much money.
That's why I love, like, when I see Black Roots,
Yes.
organizations that are being successful. I think that that's much more promising than top down. I think that that's gonna go further, and it's gonna affect more lives, and nobody can, that's something that, as long as government's doing its job at protecting minority groups, that's progress that nobody can reverse, or at this point in time, I think that that's the way that it ideally happens, right? From the grassroots efforts, personally.
And Marcus, what do you think, as someone who's literally, it's your job to be out in the community, and you're the only one here that works for government, you work for a municipality. What do you think of all of this?
The same thing that I've said before. Government can't solve your problems. Government can't make you be successful. You can extend the hand out, but some people don't want a hand up, if that makes sense. Some people just want the handout. So it goes back to what I said before. People only understand to the level of their comprehension. Some people don't have the desire to go to a top 20 university. They don't care. And so who are we to judge another person's success? Maybe they're happy being where they are in life, and that's what they understand. That's what they know. That's all they want. Everybody doesn't want to be affluent. Everyone doesn't want fame and fortune and to be at the top and legislating, making policy. So who are we to judge it?
Yeah.
We're not judging it, but I once read a quote in the book Super Hubs that if you don't understand the system in which you live, then you're being used and exploited by the system. And I accept the thing you're saying, but those people are also, and I agree with you. No one needs to aspire to be all this big shit. But you still need, and maybe that's where the grassroots organizations come in, you still need to have some understanding of whether you're being exploited by the system. So if you take too much of a lack of intellectual interest in your own goddamn life, you're gonna be exploited by the system.
Well, some people do.
I agree. I think the other thing that is hollowed out is families. I don't know. I would love to hear what you all think, but honestly, what's the greatest privilege? It's having two parents who really care.
I thought about that in the context of Todd raising his daughter, because I was like, family is the foundation of so much in life.
Yeah.
So Andre, in my own experience, I think it has pushed my listen, I will state it again as a caveat. I understand the challenges of government. You know, I worked in local government. I've interacted with local government. You know, during the pandemic, I had, you know, we had food stamps. I've interacted with the, oh my God, we interacted with the unemployment system. I mean, it is just, it's
A lot.
It's a lot, man. I mean, I just now with our foster daughter, we have WIC, right? Because it comes along to support the child. I interact with that system. I mean, it is not something that inspires a lot of you know energy and championship. I will put my, you know, at the same time, I will just say, you know, I sit there and I think about what Andre just said. We're never going to equalize the amount of energy and resources that someone who has a lot of wealth is going to put into a child versus someone who has less. We're just never, or who has time.
It's time, and also
time.
Money is a big resource, is obviously critical, and having two parents is a huge resource in time, possibly in money, and also mostly in time, right?
Yeah.
And it's also time. And it's also about the values. You know, what is the greatest priority in life, right? That's one of the biggest privileges I think I had, was family was number one in life, right? And so when I thought of having kids, I said, well, we'll have kids and we'll take the rest as we go, because that's not our greatest priority. Greatest priority is family, because that was a religious value, right? So you just had kids and you took everything else on, and as it came, you know, and it was tremendously stressful, but the priorities to my kids were always clear, right?
Yeah.
I think
so I totally, so the reason why my reflection on what Andre is saying fuels my fire for equalizing opportunity is because I know we'll never equalize that. We just won't. I mean, we moved to an area that is one of the best public schools in our area. So I'll just give specifics, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what they provide to our daughter is nowhere near what my wife and I could provide when we spend our time with them. Even though it's one of the best schools, you know, it's not the best schools in this area, public school wise. They just will never. I mean, I see what my daughter does and I compare it to what we do when we're with her. And it's just not even, you know, it just doesn't get even close, you know? So I understand that there, you know, there are some disparities unless we get those social institutions like family, you know, improved, there's only so far we can go. At the same time, given those disparities, when I know that, for instance, education is funded largely through property taxes, and property taxes are obviously based on wealth, right?
Right.
And I think about, you know, yes, there might be someone, as Marcus said, who doesn't have the motivation, but as Andre said, if we at least put people in their lives with enough resources and time, again, to feed into their sense of value with some sense of what you can do with that motivation, I just would double down on it because of.
Yeah, I don't want to like undercut what the government can do. Like WIC, we were on WIC for a long time, you know, that was a lifesaver, you know, I mean, and food stamps, like those were absolutely critical for us for many years, right? So, you know, I think that those are great programs. I would love to see them even strengthened, you know, for people who want to, you know, try to climb, you know, in class, right? And for people who just need those to get by and have a family, you know, so that's a terrific application of government, and I fully endorse those things and endorse strengthen them in some ways. So I think that kind of safety net is really important. So I agree with you. But I've also had my kids in elite school for a period of time, and then I've brought my kids to Escondido for a period of time where it's not elite, you know, but it's more culturally diverse and class diverse. And I'm thinking this is to me more education, life education, and not just book education. So there's different types of education. I personally would rather have my kids get the life education and more diversity in the place where I'm at, you know?
Yeah. No, I hear you on that. I mean, our school that was one of the prominent reasons we moved here. It wasn't just the quality of the school, so to say, in that sense, but it's a highly diverse school. So I just want to echo that as well. You know, Marcus, you said people have the motivation they do. Do you see any merit to what Andre shared around that? You know, there is a way to provide resources, human resources, perhaps that can give people at least a chance to have a different motivation and the resources that give them a path to get there. Do you believe that
Absolutely.
has merit? Okay.
Absolutely. But I still think that it's up to the individual to make a conscious decision to want and desire more. You can put it in their face. It's up to them what they do with it. So
there's so much energy that we waste on political hatred now, like so much energy. We could take half of that and redirect it toward community, half of that energy and redirect it toward people who want to participate in their community. I mean, it's just about where people are looking. And right now people are looking at the national level for everything. And they're just blown off. The energy is wasted as heat, you know, like there's no light generated here and we're not helping individuals. We're just fighting. And that's it's a tremendous waste of energy. And yet how do we get that energy focused back where it really helps and changes people's lives in the community? You know,
unfortunately, I think it's going to take tragedy. I'm just gonna be fair. And unfortunately, I think it's going to take tragedy, like something like on a national level. I mean, hopefully never again. I mean, knocking on wood, prayers crossed, we never deal with something like a 9/11 again. It's going to have to be, unfortunately, I think what's going to unify us and get us back to what really matters is going to be an unfortunate tragedy.
Yeah, like World War.
Honestly.
Yeah. I mean, it's sad, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I see the part of what's driving this to me is this top-down approach of government and so much power being concentrated in Washington, D.C. and in this elite group of people. And the more laws we pass that concentrate more and more power in that one place, it becomes this prize that everybody's after, and we're fighting because it's like, I want the prize. Oh no, it went to, you know, it's just driving that. And to me, it's just this concentration of power and all these social programs that come out of Washington. That's part of the problem as well, if you ask me. And I want to see it much more localized. So I now call myself a localist. I actually kind of want a national divorce. I want us to take some of the power out of Washington and give it back to the states and empower. I want the federal government to empower the states to solve their own problem. Like
that scares me.
Georgia has different problems than California or Oregon or whatever, or Iowa. And so let's, you know, pull some. So I love Nicholas Nassim Taleb has a great quote that I agree with. He says, at the national level, I'm a libertarian. At the state level, I'm a Republican. At the city level, I'm a Democrat. And at the family level, I'm a socialist. And I align with that completely. And I just really think this more of a local approach and grassroots is how we really lift each other up. And I think these federal programs sometimes undermine the family, where they were trying to strengthen it, and they have the opposite effect. Like if you're paid to not have a father around, well, how many fathers are going to be around? You know, and maybe some people think that's a myth, but I don't know. I think
that's a true thing.
I think it perverts incentives.
That's a true thing. But
I think the incentives are completely perverted by these big government programs.
I think it depends on the program, because it scares me because of what's happened with abortion. So what you see on the surface of what Susan has said, that gives me tremendous fear. Because I live in the buckle of the Bible Belt. And if Texas has its way, all of this shit would be gone.
Right. I mean, we saw that happen this week with a woman. And this kind of gets to, you know, I think why the political divides can be very racial. Because I can say while there can be really good intentions of like, take it out of the hands of DC and put it in the hands of the states. To my parents' generation, states' rights meant keep the schools segregated.
Right.
It was the feds who had to come in and say,
I need to qualify what I said.
Let them in the school, right? And all of that. And it was the local government that was send them back to DC, We know it's right. So to my parents and my grandparents' generation, when they hear give it back to the states' rights, they go, Like it was the feds who came in here who took care of business.
I hear you, and I needed to qualify what I said. I left out a big important part. One of the main roles of the federal government is to protect civil rights. And that is, I uphold that almost above everything. The Bill of Rights is precious to me. And, you know, the Civil Rights Act and all that. I mean, that is their job to uphold that. So we all are on an even playing field. To me, that's one of the number one jobs. So I'm sorry if I wasn't clear about that.
It was not me making an assumption that you're saying that. I'm saying that, like, just like how there's just trigger words, I can say with my parents' generation and boomers tend to vote in very big numbers. The moment they hear states' rights, they shut down. They're like, nope, we've been there before. We're not doing that again.
Yeah, I hear you. But like, I think the federal government should have desegregated schools. Absolutely. That was what they needed to do that. But yeah, I understand. I guess I need to think about it from the younger generation's point of view.
Yeah, I wonder a little bit, and I'm gonna press on this point a little bit because I want to hear some thoughts around it, because the way that Andre got concerned thinking about abortion, and Marin, thought about states' rights back in the day. I also wonder about the protection, not just from harm, but the support of the good, the support of flourishing, and the same kinds of challenges that you all are bringing up with protecting civil rights also plays out in support for development. I mean, I was in the workforce at an education system, and I can tell you that I see benefit in directing resources toward the local, but directing it to the local can also trap people who grow up in that local area to the whims of the local leaders. And so if there are not some kind of, to use your term in your question, Landon, universalism, right? Human universalism to me also means seeing value in everybody and making sure that everyone has a chance to actualize that value. And there are plenty of situations where people are trapped in their local environment. And if you just leave the decision-making for positive, uplifting things to them, then they will be left behind. And I know that someone, at a 30,000 foot level in Washington, D.C. shouldn't be developing very specific, programs for, wherever the hell you are in the country.
But I don't know, Todd, because that's why we have a House of Representatives, assuming that when you are serving in the House, you're plugged into that local community that you represent.
The interests. I think it's more about, cookie cutter solutions that might not understand local environment and local motivation. So I listen, you're talking to someone who I get concerned about about a huge level of local control, in the education system for this reason, because there are localities that, part of the luck of the draw, the lottery, that you were talking about, Landon, is where you're born, even in this country. Yeah. And for things that are controlled by the local area, that makes a huge difference. And there is not equality across the table, both in resources and in approach to things that build us up as human beings from a young age. So it's not that I don't see value on all the things you're saying in terms of distributing to the local level. I do actually agree with that in my heart, and the value, and part of the value is not just, knowing your local area better than someone in Washington, D.C. It's also what you said, which is get this extreme power out of national decision-making, and you'll have less conflict about who has national authority. I totally agree with that. I just have seen in my world people be trapped by the decisions of their local area because no one had any accountability at the local level to produce good outcomes, right?
Yeah, I mean,
and that's what I worry about. We started our country by sharing resources, right? I mean, we moved.
No. You started your country by stealing resources.
let me be specific about what I said.
Devil, baby.
I agree with you, Andre. Let me be really specific about what I meant. When we transitioned from the Articles of Confederation to the Constitution, some of it was about pooling resources, right? That if you just depended upon local areas to come with whatever they were going to come with, right? We weren't going to get the defense that we desired, right? That we were all going to be accountable to one another. And part of what I see the role of federal government is pooling resources. Now, how those resources are used, local level, what kind of accountability there is, I'm open to all sorts of things. But
COVID was an example of that. COVID literally is an example of what you were talking about.
Yeah,
what's that?
yeah, agree.
You mean in terms
The
of
same
developing
time.
things nationally, and then it had
Yeah.
the benefit for everybody.
Yeah, because Trump had the states competing for when we thought ventilators were going to help, competing for the ventilators, right? That was completely the wrong way to go about this. I'm agreeing with you, Todd. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
COVID
So
is
there's a
no-
balance here, and I just wanted to
Mhm.
give a little bit of the impetus of where my heart starts to palpitate a little bit about so much talk about local area. That's
But
it.
with COVID and localism, the different areas had different needs as far as shutdowns or, that kind of thing. It was very different depending on where you are. And one blanket policy was not good for everybody.
I agree.
Mhm.
I agree.
Right, right.
I agree with that. Thank you for watching this episode of Healing Race, and stay with us for a scene from our next video.
If you want to see more conversations like the one you just watched, please subscribe to our channel, share this video with friends and family, and like and comment on the video below.
If you'd like to be a guest on one of our episodes and have an open, real conversation about race, email us at guests@healingraceshow.com.
And if there are topics you think we should cover, we'd love to hear them. So please email your ideas to topics@healingraceshow.com.
As always, thanks for your support. We look forward to continuing the conversation with you. Now, here's a scene from our next Healing Race.
But I think too often we just focus on our differences and the things that divide us. Like Marin said, she believes it's going to take tragedy for us to unite. After 9/11, the country came together. We had a sense of pride. And now you have Susan saying that she doesn't even fly her flag on 4th of July. So what is there to be ashamed of? We're all in this country together, and we're literally allowing differences and negative things to take away our sense of pride. No, we're not perfect. Yes, we still need to make strides and focus on equality and unity, but why are we so apt to shy away from who we really are and what brings us together?
To watch the rest of that episode, go ahead and click the video below me.
To see a different compelling Healing Race episode, you can click the video below me. We look forward to seeing you in the next video.